Good morning, everybody. Upwards of $6 billion in stolen art is traded on the global black market each year. What started as a feature article in the Walrus magazine turned into a 5-year investigation by Toronto-based author Joshua Knelman. The result? Hot Art, a book that chases thieves and detectives through the secret world of stolen art. Good morning, welcome.
Thank you, good morning.
Good to have you here. So
great to be here.
We were talking about this book earlier and saying, like, is it really like the Thomas Crown affair? Is it that sort of thing where it's, you know, these glamorous burglars who are stealing these, you know, incredibly valuable pieces of art?
Right, and actually in a lot of cases the opposite is true.
Right.
So you're looking at a high volume of lesser known, lesser value art that's being drained from galleries and especially private homes, and then is passed through the hands of many people, sometimes art dealers and other collectors, into private collections. But most places, most art travels from the city where it's stolen to another city, another state, another country. So it turns into a bit of a game of hide and seek in terms of trying to find items when they're stolen.
Now, if you steal an item of art,
yeah,
is one of the aims to try and pass it through a legitimate retailer at some stage, then it really gets lost in the shuffle?
That is exactly the point. And because when you do that, you make what everybody wants, which is money.
Yeah.
And is that the motivation behind all of this? Because if you're talking about lesser known art, I mean, how much money is there to be made by stealing it and selling it in the black market?
Right. Well, one former art thief that I talked to for many years while writing this book usually wanted to make 10 to 15% profit on the items that he stole. And 10 to 15% profit can add up to thousands and thousands of dollars if you're taking the right items and you have the right network of dealers to pass it back into.
Were you able to infiltrate that network at all when you're working on your book in order to establish sort of the link between the theft and then who the art ends up with?
Well, I followed the careers of a few different detectives and a very savvy former art thief, and both of them had to learn how those networks worked in order to do their jobs properly. And of course, they were both forwarding very different goals. So the art thief really was not so much especially in terms of breaking and entering homes. In fact, he admits in the book he's quite bad at it. He's not an agile person and quite loud. The first time he tried a home burglary, he fell through the window and woke up the whole family. But what he did excel at was expanding his network of buyers. And of course, the entire object of his game was not only to sell the items to this network of buyers, but to do it almost invisibly, so always under the radar, as opposed to some of the stories you read in newspapers where a multi-million-dollar work is stolen off the wall of a museum at gunpoint. And of course, then that work is splashed across the front pages of every major paper.
Really, is it?
Well, and Paul has a name for that, which is headache art, because as he likes to put it, it gives everybody a headache.
What's the easiest stuff and the most lucrative stuff to move? Is it like ancient antiquities, things like this, that are hard to catalog?
Well, we've just seen 2 antiquities that have been stolen from the Montreal Museum, fine art.
Right.
So antiquities are a giant market, and of course they can be dug up from archaeological digs, which there are no records of, and drawn to the art markets in New York and London. So again, you're looking at a big global international game of hide and seek.
And the galleries, the galleries and museums,
right,
they have to know that a certain percentage of what they've either got on the wall or they're trying to buy or move is illegitimate.
Right. And of course the major galleries and institutions have all woken up to this problem, and I think really do their best to screen and keep stolen items out of their collections.
Who is buying, though? Like, are people knowingly buying?
It's a great question. I think look the other way is a term to use. But whenever, I think it's like anything else in life, whenever you see something that's for sale and the price is way too good to be true, you have to start asking, where did this item come from?
How do the burglars even know? I mean, this seems like it's not petty thievery, you've got to know what you're looking for. So is there someone else that's giving instructions, or, you know, do you go
Right.
take an art history course first and then get into this?
Right, and in the case of Paul, he really became a middleman and an organizer. So in fact, it was his job to identify which houses had specific kinds of artwork and antiques that he wanted, and then he outsourced the labor. So in fact, he would hire professionals to go into the house and steal on his behalf and bring them to him. So very savvy entrepreneurial fellow in terms of how he built his small business.
No kidding.
Right.
But
So
it does
what-
have a romantic image, doesn't it? I mean, when he's like the Phantom, you know, and he leaves a glove, monogram glove at the
That's
scene
right.
of
In the
every
movies,
crime.
yeah.
That's right.
It's been romanticized by Hollywood.
It has been romanticized, and that's something that I talk about in the book in terms of the myth. And the myth has an interesting place in the lexicon of international art theft, and especially in terms of the work of some great detectives, FBI agents, Scotland Yard agents, private interest group, who are really trying to get a handle on this problem, because the myth, in a sense, gets in the way. It's good on the one hand because it means that everybody knows about international art theft, but on the other hand, it doesn't really reflect the complex multi-billion-dollar global reality of this efficient area of crime.
Right.
How often does art get back to the original owner once it's stolen?
It's a very low percentage rate, but it goes it gets a lot higher if you're dealing with an area or a country that has a group of detectives or agents that actually specialize in these kinds of crimes, because they understand how to do things like, for example, have an institutional memory of art that's been stolen, because sometimes the recovery rates of these pieces is years or decades. You know, it will disappear, stay in a private collection, and then maybe a decade later pop up at an auction.
The book is, it's a great sort of mystery, and just, it takes you all around the world. It's called Hot Art. Joshua Knelman, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure talking to you. It's 20 after 7. We'll be back in just a moment.